research question, whether the ICAP framework still holds in a spontaneous space, for example, MOOC discussion forum. Will self-oriented engagement with learning materials lead to learning aligned with the goal of the course? And next, we also want to look at which kinds of topics students choose to have deeper engagement with, which could inform our future design of interventions in MOOCs to support discussion and learning. We usually consider discussion forum to be a socialization space where people are able to share personal stories and experiences. We want to look at, are people sharing stories mainly for the socializing purpose, or that they are also learning something from the sharing of personal experiences and stories? So this motivates our second research question. Are there any difference between the way students engage with different topics in the course, and will personal relevant materials trigger deeper level of engagement in the forum? My talk today, yeah, it's missing something here. So my talk today will be arranged in response to the two research questions. To answer the first research question, we developed a coding manual to code students' discussion behaviors based on the ICAP framework. And we further did regression analysis to investigate the relationship between the discussion behaviors and learning. And then in response to the second research question, we built a topic model and looked at which topics are associated with more discussion behaviors. So a very quick recap of dataset. Our dataset is the same as the dataset used in Ken's paper. It's from a psychology course which is offered on Coursera. And in this course, students can choose to register for open learning initiatives so that they have access to external learning materials. And our dataset limits to 491 students who have taken both pre and post tests in the course and participated in the discussion forum. And we manually coded forum text data, and we use clickstream data as control variables. We developed a coding manual based on the ICAP framework to categorize students' engagement with learning materials as displayed in the discussion forum. In a previous version of the coding manual, we were faced with two challenges. First, it's hard to tell whether the student is explaining to himself or is building upon or referring to someone else's idea by looking at the single post. So in this new version of coding manual, we're providing some context in the coding process by providing coders with a thread starter and previous post for each post. Another challenge was the distinction between off-topic and on-topic discussion. Sometimes students are telling their own life stories or experiences which seem to be off-topic, but actually they are using these stories to explain some principles they have learned in class, so actually they are on-topic. So with this higher inference coding manual, we have a more clear distinction between off and on-topic discussion and constructive and interactive behaviors. In the actual coding process, we have 6 categories, and we achieved a kappa of 0.721 between 2 coders. Next, I will give 3 examples of active, constructive, and interactive discussion in our dataset to give you an idea of what different engagement looks like in the discussion forum. So in this example, the student said, the information on question 8 is in the OLI textbook, but is incomplete. Question 6 was covered in a lecture, but not in a textbook. In this case, the student is referring to the quiz questions and textbook shows that he is paying attention to the course materials, but he's not generating any outputs from it. So this is coded as active behavior. And in a second example, the student displays some reasoning by explaining a phenomenon he has learned in class by saying, the more movements, especially fine, more complicated movements you do with that body part, the more space it requires in the motor cortex. So this one is coded as constructive behavior. And another student said, as regards to your dependent and independent part, I don't think we need to list those variables because here the point is to assess the role of genes or the environment. The student disagrees with the previous post and displays some reasoning. So this is coded as interactive behavior. In our actual coding, nearly 20% of the posts are off-topic, and for the on-topic posts, we assigned one of the 3 categories to them. Because there are very few interactive behaviors in our data set, in our analysis, we combine interactive and constructive behaviors as higher-order thinking behaviors, and I refer to active behaviors as pay-attention behaviors in the rest of my talk. We consider our coding manual to be a contribution to this work as well. We hope it can be applied to other data sets to understand how students are performing in the discussion forum. So if you're interested to look at the coding manual, here's the link to it. It's also included in our paper. Next, we come to our first research question: are higher order thinking behaviors associated with more learning? We first did a regression analysis at a course level and found that students who displayed higher order thinking behaviors learned more than students who only showed that they were paying attention to course materials. And students who showed they were paying attention learned more than students who were constantly off topic in the forum. However, this raises a question that whether the students who displayed more high order thinking behaviors are a different type of students who have better learning skills so that they learned more, or because they learned more through deeper engagement with learning materials as displayed in the forum. In order to account for individual difference, we did 2 further analysis using 2 different approaches. One is a propensity score matching approach to only compare students who have a similar level of participation in the course. I'll talk about this analysis in details later. And the second approach to account for individual difference is a bi-week analysis to look at for each student whether for the weeks he displayed more higher order thinking behaviors, he learned more compared with the weeks that he didn't display any of these behaviors. The 3 analyses listed here generated consistent results. And in this talk, I will only talk about the propensity score matching analysis. Propensity score matching is a method used to reduce selection bias when random assignment is not viable. For example, when we think the control group is systematically inferior to the experiment group, we'll use this matching method to select those in the control group that are systematically similar to the treatment group for comparison. In our case, the treatment group is students who have displayed high order thinking behaviors, and the control groups is students who haven't. And in this table, we display the variables we used for this matching. The variables include non-post, which is the number of posts students have contributed in the forum, and pre-test, which is a measurement of their prior knowledge to the course. And OI registration, as Ken has mentioned, is a binary variable measuring whether they have registered for Open Learning Initiative. And the 4 variables below, video, quiz, OLI site, and forum, are click stream data, which measures the number of clicks on these different kind of activities. And the 3rd column on the right displayed the mean for each of the variables for the control group before matching, which corresponds to our pre-assumption that students who haven't displayed high-order thinking behaviors are inferior to the treatment group. We can see that they have lower pre-test scores, fewer posts, and fewer clicks on other course activities. And after matching, we matched 119 pairs of students who have similar level of course participation as displayed in the 1st and 2nd column. And one thing to notice here is that from our matching results, our statistics actually favored the control group, as you can see by comparison between the 1st and 2 columns. In the control group, students on average had higher pre-test scores and more participation in other activities. And even in this case, we still see a treatment effect here. We display our regression results in the following table. The dependent variable is the student's standardized final grade. We use the student's general participation in the course as control variables. These are the same as I just introduced in the matching process, including their pre-test score, the number of posts they have made, their clicks on video quiz forum, and whether they have registered for Open Learning Initiative. And we found that students who have displayed higher order thinking behaviors learned more than students who haven't. From the first analysis, we made this claim that deeper engagement in the discussion forum is helpful for learning. Students are engaged in a more effective way when the course material, with the course materials when they display more high-order thinking behaviors. One thing to notice here is that in our analysis, we combined constructive and interactive behaviors as high-order thinking behaviors because interactive behaviors are very sparse in our data set. Although the discussion forum is designed to be an interactive space, students seldomly build upon or refer to each other's ideas. Because in the ICAP framework, Mikichi found interactive behaviors to be more valuable than other behaviors. We already see an opportunity here to facilitate more interaction and idea exchange in the discussion forum. And next, I'll move on to our second research question. What topics in the course trigger more of these discussion behaviors? And we adopted a topic modeling approach to build a topic model on the textbook. We used LDA topic modeling, and 15 chapters from the textbook is used as the corpus. We break down the textbook corpus into 3-sentence units and treated each unit as a document. So there are 2,946 documents in the corpus, and we extracted 15 topics from it. We then apply the topic model to the corpus so that each document is represented as a vector of the 15 topics. Because each document has a corresponding chapter in the textbook, and the chapter is mapped to 1 week in the course, and we have already computed the number of higher orders and thinking behavior students have displayed in each week of the course, so that we built a regression model to use these topics to predict the number of higher order thinking behaviors in each week. This is to look at which topics are associated with more high order thinking behaviors in the discussion forum, which I also refer to as richer discussion. Among the 15 topics in the course, we found 5 topics have positive effect and 5 topics have negative effect. And in this table, I'm highlighting the 2 topics that have the highest weight in predicting higher order thinking behaviors in green. The 2 topics are development and language and intelligence. And the 2 topics highlighted in red are the 2 topics that have the highest negative weight in predicting high order thinking behaviors, which are memory and biopsychology and neuroscience. We already see a contrast here that the 2 positive topics are more social oriented, which are easier to make live inference compared to the 2 negative topics. In this table, we display words that have the highest weight in both positive and negative topics. Positive here means that the topics are positively associated with richer discussion, and negative means the topics are negatively associated with richer discussion. This table also shows that words in the positive category are more descriptive of social life, which are easier for students to make connections with, and the words in the negative category contain technical terms that are less used in daily life conversations. The contrast between positive and negative topics and the words associated with them give us a big picture of what's the difference between topics that students have richer discussion on and the topics that students don't. And next, we qualitatively looked at textbook units and students' posts on different topics to make comparisons. We ranked text units based on their weights on different topics. We did this both chapter-wise and course-wise. And then, first of all, we contrasted between documents that have the highest and lowest weight on a certain topic, for example, development in a certain chapter. To constrain in the same chapter, we are better able to tell the difference between different text units. And second, we also contrasted between documents that have highest weight on positive topics and the documents that have highest weight on negative topics. Although this isn't a statistical analysis, we think by looking at the text units and students' posts qualitatively, we'll get a better idea of what are the units that associated with richer discussion look like, and what do students' deeper engagement with these topics look like. In the paper, we provide more examples across different topics in different chapters. And here I'll give 3 examples of text units and 1 example of student post. Here's a text unit that has the highest weight on the topic development from the development chapter. Because it has the highest weight on development, we consider it to be positively associated with richer discussion. I'm highlighting the words which are about life experience, including toilet training, parents' attitudes towards toilet training, and influence on adult personality. And from the same chapter, here is a document that has the lowest weight on the topic development, which makes it negatively associated with richer discussion. I'm highlighting the words that are technical terms and not frequently used in daily life, including regressive autism, colitis syndrome, MMR vaccine, etc. And here's another document that has the highest weight on the topic brain, which is negatively associated with richer discussion. And I'm also highlighting the words that are technical terms and not frequently used in daily life, including neurons, dendrite, axon, glans, spinal cord, etc. From the 3 examples here, it gives a picture what's the difference between textbook units that are positively or negatively associated with richer discussion look like. And next, I'll give 1 example that illustrates how students show deeper engagement with the topic language. This is 1 example on the topic language that is coded as interactive behavior. We can see from the example that the italicized part is related to course materials. The students is saying, I'm making week 6 and learning about development of the speech. What we learn about is true about child who has 1 language, but what about children who have contact with more languages? And the underlying part is the student's personal experience. She is saying, for example, my son, now 2.5 years old, I talk to him in Polish, his father in Arabic. Together with my husband, we speak English, and 4th language is language of country where we live, French. Adam is just starting to talk right now. So by this example, I want to show that the student is actually using her personal life experiences to explain some of the principles, for example, the language phenomena she has learned in this class. We learned from the second analysis from the topics that social-oriented topics such as development and intelligence trigger richer discussion than neuroscience topics, and people are engaged deeper when they are using life-relevant examples to explain course-relevant materials. 1 thing to notice here is that we're not making any correlation between factors from a qualitative analysis. The goal of this analysis is to provide more visibility into what's happening in the discussion forum and give us an idea about what makes the difference between topics that are either positively or negatively associated with richer discussion. And from the previous 2 analyses, we have some ideas for future design to support discussion and engagement in MOOCs. And this will also be our future work. I'm happy to talk about future opportunities if any of you is interested. So first of all, 1 thing we noticed is that students don't engage with topics such as neuroscience as deeply as the topics such as development and language. To support their engagement with the topics that are not easy to make life connections by nature, we can probably provide life-relevant examples and activities as materials in the course and remove comprehension obstacles of technical terms in the course. Another thing we noticed is that there were 20% posts in our dataset that are off-topic. However, we see potential that if students are able to relate personal experiences to course materials, it will be helpful for their learning. This shows opportunities to provide support for students to relate personal experiences to course materials for the benefit of their learning. And finally, we are currently working on a computational model to automatically distinguish between discussion behaviors as I specified in the coding manual. This will provide opportunities to use discussion forum as an additional source of evaluation of their performance in the course and offer adaptive feedback and provide opportunities for us to offer adaptive feedback based on their performance in the discussion forum. So that's all of my talk, and I'll take questions now.
Thank you. So, any questions? Yep.
Okay, thanks a lot for the talk. One thing I've been working on is how we can add some more guidance or structure into different parts of courses. So I build MOOClets, which are technology that lets you, put in different questions or explanations and test them out or personalize them. But I was trying to think of how it would apply here. Like, would it be useful, for example, on certain discussion forums, to have a set of questions the instructors come up with, and based on someone's experience in the course, they get one version or another? Or can you induce people's reading comprehension level so that when you do give them prompts or examples that they can respond to, you could use this kind of MOOClet to personalize it? I'm just trying to think of, if you had that kind of technology capacity, would that help solve any of these kinds of design problems?
So we are working on a computational model to automatically detect these kind of discussion behaviors. So one idea I had was that if we found the student is constantly being off topic in the discussion forum, we could probably provide some prompts to ask them to relate to the course materials. And if we found the students is maybe only pointing to resources like this is a question in this week, but without displaying any reasoning or explaining any problems, we can probably provide prompts like, can you explain, can you be more specific about what you thought when you are saying here? And because interactive behaviors is considered to be most valuable, we can probably also provide some prompts to ask them to build upon each other's ideas when we found their posts are kind of similar. Like when we found two students are discussing about the same topics, we could probably ask them to refer to each other.
Hi, Wang Shi. Thank you so much for your sharing. Seems a lot of very hard work, so thank you very much. I just have a question about the coding of the category of constructivistic, I think constructivistic activities, right, or learning behavior, which is then classified as higher order behavior. The example that you gave is of a student perhaps applying or stating a new idea relevant to the topic. How do you ascertain that this is a new idea that is constructivistic in nature and not a reproduction of someone else's idea in the discussion forum or the learning material? Yeah.
Yeah, so in our coding manual, for the active category, if we think the student is like in the active category, if a post shows that the student is quoting something that is taught in the lecture, or rephrasing what is taught in the lecture, that is coded as active. If you don't have obvious evidence that they are quoting from the course materials, we consider that to be a new idea from them. And for your question whether it's a new idea or this is a reproduction of a previous idea, in the coding process for each post we provide the thread setter and the previous post as a context. So for example, if we see the student is actually referring to a previous idea and with some new input in this post, that is considered as an interactive behavior. Does that answer your question?
Let's take two more questions. So.
Thank you very much. This presentation is very clear and the research is well designed. I just was wondering, when you talk about more learning or more learning game, so how do you define it and how do you quantify it?
Yeah, so for most MOOCs, there isn't a pre and post test by which we usually measure learning gains in a education context. But this MOOC is a special MOOC which has a pre-test and a post-test, so that by controlling for the students' pre-test score, we are able to measure their gains from this course with a post-test. Is that clear?
Hi, I'm going to follow up on Jennifer's earlier question about the coding manual. It seems like you've coded something interesting here, maybe related to higher order thinking skills, but I'm also concerned with the notion of interactive versus constructive versus active in this context for a couple of reasons. It's sort of funny because the framework, the ICAP framework, is about modes of engagement. So, and I'm being a bit silly when I say this, in some sense, it's all in an online discussion, hence it's all interactive. Now obviously her framework says interactive is much more stringent, and it's supposed to be Is it back? Yeah. It's supposed to be a sustained series of constructive comments back and forth. And so it's actually a quite high criteria. It's not defined at the level of an individual comment, but a sequence of back and forth. So there's this unit of analysis problem in that it's assigning a code to a single comment actually wouldn't fit the way you described it as a mode of engagement. And so I think that's a real issue to think about, and it's something we struggle with discussion forums. If it's really a mode of engagement that's interactive, you need to be looking bigger than a turn of talk, which creates a unit of analysis issue. And I'm also a little concerned with the manual coding, because it sounded like you thought the inter-rater reliability had been good enough previously to go with a single coder, but having done this coding myself, and as Jennifer pointed out, so much contextual and looking at previous comments and making inferences, we've had a lot of trouble getting reliability, and I think that's so important. As you pointed out, you didn't get all of the results you might have been expecting, and I wonder if some of these reasons are why. And I do think you're capturing something interesting and different between the comments there. I'm just not totally sure what it is, and if the notion of being interactive versus constructive is the best way to think about it.
So in the ICAP framework, it's designed to assess students to assess students' engagement mode with learning materials by looking at their observable behaviors in the classrooms. Because in a classroom, the teacher is able to have a better sense of what the students, for example, whether the student is looking at the blackboard or whether the students move something. But in a MOOC context where we don't have like that rich information of students' movements. But I think from the discussion forum is kind of a product of their learning. Like they display their thinking process as in their post, as they post in the discussion forum. And although the discussion forum is designed to be an interactive space, I think not all of the behaviors we found in the discussion forum are actually interactive. Actually, most of the posts I think the students display in the discussion forum show that they are in an active or constructive mode instead of an interactive mode. I think you are right that probably when we look at a chains of interaction that could align more with engagement. But I think when we code each post individually, we still see that when the students is making this contribution in the discussion forum, what kind of what's the underlying cognitive process the student is engaged in with the learning materials he's talking about.
So if I could just jump in really briefly as Drew's advisor, because so I think that these points are well taken. I just want to point out though that I think the distinction that she's making was motivated by Mikichi's ICAP framework, and she's actually talked to Miki about it, and I think we all agree that what she's capturing is not what was originally part of Miki's, the goal of what she was doing per se, and yet the question of whether the findings extend is still kind of an interesting and relevant question. But you could compare the coding manual itself to a lot of very standard coding approaches in the CSEL community that are applied at the turn level, like the transactivity kind of coding, where I would say the active, constructive, interactive distinction is much like non-reasoning externalization and transactivity. And in that particular kind of a case, the same sort of pattern of the order of how much learning would come has been consistent. So I haven't been picky about saying, oh, let's not attribute it to ICAP, but I do think it's not specific to ICAP, so that's all taken.
So let's thank one more time to all our speakers. And thanks for the